Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse, and you are on the Bible Forum. This is Sunday night, September 23rd, 2018, and we are embroiled. We are in the midst of this horrendous conflict, this constitutional chaos and problem, a crisis. And unless you are deliberately hiding from the news, you know that there's a woman in California who's accusing a U.S. Supreme Court judge appointee by the name of Brett Kavenaugh of a sexual crime or at least some form of physical abuse when they were both about 15 years of age. The nation is glued to their televisions, to their computers, to their phones, their devices, whatever it is, wondering how all this is going to turn out. Political activists and avid political junkies are holding their breath to see how it's all going to work. Should Kavanaugh be required to pay a price for what he did? Can we have a man on the Supreme Court of these United States who would assault a woman and then act as though it never happened? Does this woman have no rights? The problem in all of this has nothing to do with the issues the press, the politicians, and the pundits are pushing. You see, the Bible tells us that if we have an offense against another person, if someone has done something to you, they've offended you in a meaningful way, anything up to and including the physical, we have recourse. The Bible says that we are first to go to that person and tell them what they did to you. He said, don't they know? They may not. There are people on this planet that can run right over you and never even know you were there. Say ugly, horrid things, do things that are destructive, and they don't even know it. So you go to that person, you tell them, look what you did. They have an obligation to accept responsibility and to offer initially their, I don't want to use the wrong word here. I don't want to say, their apology in any sense of the word, because apology doesn't mean anything. They are required to acknowledge that, yes, they did this. Didn't really know how it impacted you, but yes, I did that. And I am just as sorry as I can be that that's the way it worked for you. I don't. And you accept the responsibility for what you did. And to be honest, if it cost you money, if I damaged you or I damaged your property, I have an obligation to do what I can to make that right. And if that dynamic takes place, the Bible says it's done. However, if the person goes to someone and points out that this took place and nobody cares, then the Bible says, now you are to tell it to others. And I don't mean your neighbor. The Bible's talking about those who can do something about it, not the media. In a church environment, you'd go to the elders of the church. We're the leadership of that church. You two both are in the church together. You go to the leader and say, this happened, and she or he, they won't do. They have an obligation to get involved. If it's in a more broadly social, maybe in a family or a group, larger extended family or a neighborhood or whatever, there are people that you can go to that could help you make the point. In the Kavenaugh-Ford issue playing itself out on the television, on the internet, and in Congress, having violated the divine principle, everybody involved is now jockeying for position And I'm here to tell you that this issue is not likely ever to be resolved. But it does make good TV. And it does give the media the opportunity to make some money. It also gives the politically oriented types, whether it's media or politicians, fuel to fire up their point of view and to make points. In this particular case, the accuser does not remember where the event took place. She doesn't even remember when exactly. She thinks it was the summer of 1982, which means 35 years ago. The yearbooks from the college prep school she attended indicate, actually boast, of a party culture wherein passing out and forgetting everything done the night before was common. These are from some of the comments made by the girls in this, the three of them, the sophomore, junior, and senior year yearbooks. They're online. You can go see it. The yearbook from when this accuser was in high school, however, is no longer available online. Somebody took pictures of it before they shut it down. It's amazing to me. Excerpts from these 3 years, sophomore, junior, senior, you can look at a website called cultofthefirst.blogspot.com. They got pictures of it and everything. Here was a prestigious girls' school, and they are recounting in their yearbooks a regular atmosphere of alcohol, boys, sex, and passing out. And in this context, this woman doesn't have a clear memory of these events. She is remembering what she has always remembered, but she may not have remembered accurately. We don't know. There are other men who have been named as being the present who are now denying any knowledge of the thing. They weren't there. None of them remember anything about this. And what is the offense that's so heinous? Well, that at a party, which according to the yearbooks would have been alcohol and sex laced, at least 2 boys tried to have sex with her. One tried to take her clothes off, touching her inappropriately. This one-sided account is laced with a contemporary term not generally used in those days, but it discusses sexual assault. You see, back in those days, among teenagers, a girl simply had to push a boy away to get him to stop. She could also yell at him, slap him, if she was serious. And it would take a fairly committed boy, a roughneck in every sense of the word, to continue in the face of that kind of rebuke. A boy who was rough and did not care about other people. Does that sound like Judge Kavenaugh? Of course, if the girl was drunk, her ability would be diminished. But then the question becomes, why would a girl get drunk at a party with a bunch of boys? Especially in an environment where alcohol and sexual excess were de rigueur. And if she were that drunk, what's that say about her memory of the event? But 27 years later, this woman, who is now referred to as Dr. Ford, began therapy for her anxieties. 6 years ago, 27 years after the event. And growing out of her therapy for these ongoing emotional problems, Dr. Ford felt the need to make a statement. Now, I know a little bit about counseling. This ministry is sponsored by Alternatives Biblical Counseling and Education Incorporated. Been doing this a lot of decades, read a lot, went to school a little bit, kind of around it enough to know how it works. And I'm here to tell you, this therapist, whoever, whatever type he may have been, and no doubt she went to somebody who had a degree in something or other, psychologist, psychiatrist, something of that nature. But her therapist no doubt told her that all of this would help the healing process. You know, you need to confront this person. You're not getting any resolution, no satisfaction, because this doesn't have anything to do with you. This man did this to you. You need to go to him and you need to tell him about it. Now keep in mind the context. She has apparently told no one about this before. Certainly not anybody official like a counselor, a priest, a pastor, somebody who could guide her through a resolution process. Certainly did not tell her parents. Which means she did not confront her attacker and did not give him the opportunity at that time in their life to accept responsibility and make restitution, however it could have been. Keep in mind her motivation for all this appears to be focused on her need to resolve the issue for her. How all this impacts the other person doesn't seem to be important at all. And then there's a question. Does this crime, because that's the way it's being presented, rise to the level of total destruction of one's life? That a young girl, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, would have to deal with a hormone-raging teenage boy and stop him from touching her or trying to take her clothes off. In a bedroom, no doubt, at a party where they're all getting drunk and she can't even remember what happened. Does this crime rise to the level of the total destruction of someone else's life? Again, resolution can only occur between the respective parties. Making a public statement before confronting the offender is not consistent with seeking restitution. It's more akin to punishment or revenge. If it's less than that, it's about selfishness. It's about, I need to have satisfaction so I can get on with my life. I'm really conflicted. My guess is she's conflicted over a lot of things in her life, piled one on top of the other into a ball that she can no longer handle. This is just one of them. And her therapist is saying, go back to the beginning and let's work through. When she gets done with this guy, she's probably going to move on to her first husband or some other boyfriend or some other girl, something else in her life, a job where she was treated badly. She has to work through all this garbage in order to get sanity or get decency and stability back into her life. These are the kinds of things these counselors are telling people. In seeking this sort of resolution, Dr. Ford wrote to her senator, did not write to the offender, wrote to her senator, Dianne Feinstein. She also wrote to a newspaper, The Post. Never wrote to Judge Kavenaugh. A senator who has made it clear that he does not want Roe v. Wade touched. But a senator who is willing to keep that letter private for at least 6 weeks. She does not want Kavenaugh seated. Senator Feinstein sat on the letter And we can only imagine why she did that. But in doing that, the issue careened out of control. And Dr. Ford was forced to back off. This was way too much publicity. Imagine she has people in her lawn, on her lawn every day, all day, cameras waiting for her to come out the front door. It's not a lot of fun. Now it seems she's willing to testify if she can be made certain that the conditions are fair and ensure her safety. Do you know that fairness is the enemy of justice? In the effort to be fair, giving everyone an equal standing, the tendency is to bend justice so as not to be overly judgmental. You see, justice is the impartial application of the law regardless of who you are. Fairness, on the other hand, is based on the assertion of individual opinion. Fairness is rooted in the transitory nature of societies over time. What is fair today might not have been fair 40 years ago. And I can guarantee it won't be fair 40 years in the future. Fairness also subjugates the rights of the individual to the enforcement of whatever society currently believes, what they believe should be. Time being the operative word. What was fair in 1988 is not necessarily fair today. What is right, honorable, decent in 1988 is not necessarily what they are today. Here is the tension that is between the oughts and the shoulds of life. For example, if you take a free market system and you compare that with Marxism, in that comparison, it is Marxism that is fair, and the free market system which is just. In establishing a more socialistic system, it is necessary that the absolute standards of law and economics be sacrificed, because that's only fair. The Russian Revolution proved the point. The Russian Revolution brought about socialism. But over time, economic socialism had to be modified in order for people to eat, because it didn't work. In the same way, fairness seeks to enforce an idea, while justice seeks to protect individuals. What is fair when it comes to testifying under oath? Well, that the questions are germane, that they have some bearing on what we're talking about here. And nothing of what this woman is talking about has anything to do with the questioning of a judge about a promotion. He's also already a judge in the highest court of the land, short of the U.S. Supreme Court. It is also necessary that the answers be honest, and that the outcome be not assumed ahead of time, but rather adjudged, and done so only in response to the testimonies. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, we can expect the decision to divide along party lines. It already has. There are 21 members, and they are divided. There are 11 Republicans, there are 10 Democrats. And it is increasingly harder in the last 20 years to find a conservative Democrat. Only one Democrat on this committee has ever shown any sort of conservative values, and there's very little of that. His name is Senator Blumenthal. And to his credit, he supports the restriction of money in politics. He supports consumer protection, disaster relief, funding education, environmental protection. But after that, he's as liberal as they come. So what's going to happen? Well, Dr. Ford will appear before the Senate committee this week on Thursday. It will not be under the circumstances she dictated. They're going to do what they want to do. She can come if she'd like to come, and she'd like to come. She will tell her story, and she will field questions, no doubt with her attorney present. Judge Kavenaugh will go through the same process. In the end, we will not know any more about this situation than we know right now, except some of the specifics. And the Democrats will move to discredit Judge Kavenaugh, and they'll vote no. And the Republicans will move to recommend him to the Senate. They will vote yes. And he will be appointed to the Supreme Court by vote of Republicans. The Vice President, in my opinion, will probably have to cast the deciding vote. I don't know which Republican may back off, but my money is on Senator Rand Paul. He will probably vote no on principle, meaning I can't vote yes because I don't know enough. I can't vote yes because we didn't take enough time. I can't vote yes because we cannot ever know. That's the kind of thing he tends to do. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but he has gotten on the inside with the current president because of his recalcitrance. And as a result, he has gotten some of the things he really would like to have. It's called politics. What's the lesson here? What's the message? Well, from my perspective, it's society becoming more sexualized and less understanding of objective moral standards. Gossip, innuendo, supposition is being used to confuse and to obfuscate. Why? Well, the overarching answer is postmodernism. In postmodernism, truth is not absolute. You see, in our world today, like beauty, truth is in the eye of the beholder. You have your truth, I have my truth. Oh, and we've got a U.S. representative, name is Keith Ellison, he's from Minnesota, who's getting a pass. Several weeks ago, a couple of months ago, Karen Moynihan, his live-in girlfriend for several years, said she had complained for the last year about the congressman's abusive behavior toward her. There was a blow-up that made it into the newspaper, and apparently he hit her, beat her, did something. He put marks on her. But the story only ran for about 2 or 3 days, and it has pretty much disappeared down the memory hole. She has recently posted a medical document showing her complaints. In the medical document, Moynihan states she suffered a very stressful environment for years. The question, why did you stay? And it says she dealt with, quote, emotional and physical abuse prior to the end of the relationship. In a Twitter post of the document on Wednesday, Moynihan wrote, "When I post this, it gets deleted every time." Who's taking it down? You take a post down off of Twitter? I can't. Oh, and Representative Ellison is planning to run for senator. Want to guess the outcome? Here's a case, an actual case of abuse over against a suggested case of abuse, which is now 35 years old. Which one do we hear about? And the one we're hearing about, that's the one we're doing because we want to be fair. Did I tell you? Fairness is the enemy of justice. Stay tuned. It's going to get worse.